And you know what Chuck
The
is?
league was
Chuck
conspiring.
is an Orlando Pirates fan.
The league was conspiring. We're supposed to claim 6 points from Real AM. The league was not conspiring.
Supposed to claim 6 points.
I was thinking 6 points
We
here.
don't know. We don't know. There is no Robert this week, but there is Jay, there is Chuck. There's always Jay, there is always Chuck. Welcome back to Two Up Front. As I did mention, my name is Jay. What's up, Chuck?
Oh, good, man. Yeah, as you said, I'm not Rob, but I mean, eventually it will be that star power that you want to see, right? But the content, always fire.
Always fire indeed. How's your weekend in sports, and where do we start this one, Chuck?
Weekend, I mean, it was a bit different, especially in England. There's no league games, but there was the FA Cup, and then with the local footballs, sputterings of games here and there. Not everyone played, but interesting results. Nedbank Cup here and there, PSL. So interesting results, and I think the right teams won more often than not, I think.
Yes, indeed. And we start with Chiefs, yes?
Yes, we do. And the right teams won, and that would be Arrows because of Chiefs' continued defensive frailties. If you look at just that goal, we'll get into it, right? The question is, Jay, after yet another loss, they back-to-back losses. I think they've got so many back-to-back losses. It's crazy. It's not Chiefs' form, basically. It's not the form of a big team. And at this point, we have to be blunt here and find out, is it the team or is it the coach? Who's at fault? Is it that the coach is incapable of making them better, or these players cannot be worked with? Where does the blame lie?
Chuck, at this point, it's both, right? The answer is that it's both, and I'll get into the examples in terms of the game against Arrows as to why I say that. But if I had to lean towards one over the other, it's the coach. It's the coach. First of all, why I say it's both. Go back to the game against Golden Arrows. Look at the first goal, right? In that first goal, you've got Usbia who comes in and has an easy tap in at the back post. There's no one with him. Behind him, actually, if you watch that frame, there's another Golden Arrows player who is coming into the box. He also has no man who's tracking him. There's only one defender in the box, right? You lose a duel on the sideline, and where are the rest of the Chiefs players? There are no Chiefs players in frame. All of the Chiefs players are caught in the opposition half. Now, that speaks to their rest defense. That is the coach in terms of how are you coaching this rest defense? Because how is it that both fullbacks are high up, and then you've got the center back who's dragged out, and he throws himself at the player, which is the player in that case, and then they're through on goal. It's a 2-on-1, and Chuck, in that instance, it can't be that easy to play through them, because my question is, where's the midfield? Right, where is the cover defense? It's nowhere in sight. And the thing is, we've seen Kaizer Chiefs concede in that manner multiple times this season. Particularly, teams know Mangoba knew you overload on the wing and with the fullback pushed up, and then as I'm saying, you pull one of the centre backs, and then you've got the numerical advantage. But it's also the players, because again, if you then look back at that goal, that very same goal. One, as I said, the coaching of the rest defense is in shambles because there's no structure to it whatsoever. But you look at the effort of those players getting back. There's little effort, and it's that fact, and it's also the fact that there's little awareness. Where is the leader on the field? Where are the voices? Where are the experienced players? Where are the players whose minds are tuned into the game? When you look around and you see that if there's a turnover here, we are going to be exposed. Why is no one seeing that? Why is there no awareness from the players whatsoever, and to communicate this amongst themselves that, guys, maybe you want to drop some players back, or maybe if one of the fullbacks is gone, Solomons is playing in that game and he's a very attacking fullback, then we should have Udove stay back. Let's not all go at the same time. Again, because we've seen how we are punished when this happens. So it's both. But the reason I would then lean more on the coach, Chuck, is the fact that for me this season, coming from another international break, Kaizer Chiefs players were not playing for Bafana. The coach had these players for 2 weeks. And that was the same thing at the last international break. He had them for 2 weeks. He had a preseason. And guess what happened at the start of this PSL season? It was delayed, right? There was another month where essentially the preseason was extended if you are not playing in the MTN 8, and do you know who was not playing in the MTN 8 this particular season, at the start of this season? Kaizer Chiefs, which means once again, the coach had all that time. He's had a preseason and 2 mini preseasons in between this season, but they've come back and they don't look like there's any improvement. And then I have to ask the question, what have you been doing with these players in these 2 weeks? The other thing, Chuck, is the fact that, again, the conversation is starting, and maybe we'll have this conversation one of these good days, maybe towards the end of the season. What do you do with these players? Are these the players? Do you get him more players? And let me just be clear. I said at the start of Nabi's tenure, this is just my feeling with every coach, unless they do absolutely terribly, and Nabi's on the verge of that. But you give the coach 6 windows for me. You give them the main transfer window at the end of the season, the one in the one in December, and 2 others. Of course, if you show no improvement in the middle of that, meaning so you'll have this transfer window at the end of the season, you'll have the one in December. If there's no in January, if there's no improvement, discernible improvement between January and the end of next season, then there's a different conversation. But this coach has gotten players. They got players in January. They got players at the start of the season. They've made 10 signings, I believe. And this is not even including the players who have been promoted from the DDC. If you stretch back to last season, it's 20 players, right? So there have been players who've come in, and you can't even make the argument that it's not his players. Are there more of his players that can come in? Yes, there are, and we'll see what happens at the end of the season. But he did get the players. Uqel is in there now. There's Ulilepo, who came in also in the January transfer window. Morris was not the player that they should have signed. I know he's been struggling with injury, but I think we already spoke about that. We don't foresee him making much of a difference at Kaizer Chiefs. But the were players. You've had time with these players, and the results are not getting better. Instead, we are seeing a Kaizer Chiefs who are losing a 10th match in only 23 games in the Betway Premiership. So it is both, but if I have to lean more towards one, I would say the coach is a problem right now, because where are the recipes?
I mean, I think I'd have to agree with you, Jay, because if you think about the players who are struggling now, right? Actually, Dupree, although we're talking about a couple of seasons back, was good for Steadies. Modi, for the very same opposition that beat them this weekend, it was good for your Arrows. If you think about other players as well who've come to Kaizer Chiefs and they have since then struggled, you ask yourself, what's happened to the players, right? It's the same thing that you'd ask yourself when you talk about like the Paul Pogbas and the Sanchez when you talk about Man United, in terms of these guys were good back there in their previous clubs. When they come here, something goes wrong. But the thing I want to talk about, Jay, is the fact that they've been conceding goals the entire season. There hasn't been a fix for that. You can't suffer the entire season the same problem, then say it's the players. Coach, you're seeing the same thing we're seeing. What's your fix for it? Whether you put in Dortley, who's injured now, whether Fawam Simango comes back, or whether you stick with Miguel, you still concede goals nonetheless. Whether you change up or De Klerk, who's gone as well, or it's Cross, or whoever he plays at the back, they're always going to concede goals. Whoever he plays in goals, whether it's Bruce Vuma, whether it's Peterson, or whether it's Untwari, they always concede goals anyway. So for me, you can't have the same problem from the start of the season until now, and then it's put it on the players. I think as a coach, you choose one of the struggles. Either we'll struggle in front of goal, but we start at the back, or we'll play an open style of play where we score goals as well. Neither one of those things are happening. So for me, it's the same thing. The reason why I bring Man United as an example is that's the same thing that's happened with Ten Hag, that the entire season they were open, but then they won the FA Cup. And you're like, okay, we won something, but no. The bigger body of work suggests that there's something wrong with this team. So for me, when I look at Unabiche, their goals that have been considered all the time, they're probably at the top. I mean, you are one who said to me, Uguti, Paris shouldn't play with a double pivot. They should play because their fast brand of football, their attacking brand of football is probably the best in the league. And if they do that, the chances are they'll hurt the opposition more than they get hurt themselves. But Chiefs have got the players and they create the chances, but they get hurt more than the other teams. They're sitting on -5, if I'm not mistaken, on their goal difference. And you're like, this can't be Chiefs. You look at the players that he's signed. Also, I think the coach is at fault because Morris was never the right player. He was never the solution. Ilepo, I don't know. Is it the thing that I'm talking about? He was good back there, but when it comes to Don Chiefs colours, he doesn't perform anymore. Skele has shown his quality, but there's only so much you can do as a singular player. Then you have a player like Umar, and I was like, I've always wanted to defend Mart, but at this point in time, I'm at the end of my rope. I can't keep doing it because he scores a goal, and you want to say, there you go, he's a good player, misses the penalty, then loses so many balls in midfield as well. You're like, what do they do with this player? He's their captain as well. So I think it's more on the coach here because at this point in time, maybe you don't have to improve the team in terms of challenging, but at least make them solid, make them competitive, make them hard to beat. You can't have Mangoba slot in at Arrows and all of a sudden they've turned a corner. You've had, as you said, preseason you've had signings, you've had time with the team, and you're still struggling to stop goals from coming in. I mean, case in point, Jay, this must be a defensive drill. If it's not, then I don't know what it is. The winning goal, Untati goes down, beats down the wing, beats Udove. Okay, cool, I get that, right? He's found the outside, he's gone down the touchline. When he comes back in again, he gets the better of Udove. At that point in time, before he plays the ball, there are 4 Chiefs players in the box, 4 defenders in the box. When he finally makes contact with the ball, he's running in between the centre backs to make contact with that ball. And you're like, guys, there's 4 of you. There's no awareness. Is there potential danger? If there is, where is it? Okay, let's say we don't know where the danger is. Let's make sure we get first to the ball. Either one of those things are coachable things, Jay. And I look at that and I'm like, Chiefs have the same problems from the beginning and they're not being resolved. So for me, it's a coaching issue, Jay. I mean, yes, the players were never good enough, but at some point, the coach can make them better, or at least put them in a system where they're safe in terms of, okay, let's just play 4-5-1. Let's just put Orang up front and hope for the best. Let's at least end all games with a not draw. That's what Solos were doing. They couldn't score, but they were hard to beat as well. So they drew. I know it's not the best example because where are they now? But you have to be better than this, Jay. We can't be. I think before when it was the Baxters and when it was Calvin Johnson, is it the coach? Is it the players? But now that we've got a revered coach and things are not working, it can't always be the players because windows have been opened, players have been signed, things have been changed. The Chiefs, same results. So I think on this one, it must be the coach.
The actual answer is Erignes Nyama in Chiefs. That is the actual answer. But in terms of the coach, Chuck, there's also the fact that you look at the game against Arrows, right? Pule Modi has been Kaizer Chiefs' best player in 2025. Why is he not playing? You just rotate the team for the sake of rotation. And you have a situation whereby Utlele comes off in the second half and you are chasing that game, you're trying to win that game, and you bring on Ox. That doesn't make any sense, right? So he rotates the team as though like these players like are on trial. I get that at the beginning of the season, you're trying to find out about these players, but you don't even know what your best team is at this point. But even in a situation whereby there are clear signs that your best 11 in 2025 includes Upule Modi. Yes, he's had his issues in front of goal, right? And you don't think that's going to improve at the age of 32. But based on form and in terms of creating chances and making Chiefs a more dangerous team, he's been their best player. And I know it's a situation of in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? Mm-hmm. But he is. And so you go with him, you go with the hot hand, but he just changes it and there's no real reason why. There's no real reason why. And you can make the argument that he wants to include Usirino, right? And he's also playing Omshin in one of those midfield positions. But when you do then make a change, like not everyone can play. Like either Serino who's been on the sidelines, he stays there and he fights for his way back into the team, or you play him as the 10 and you keep him out. But don't make sacrifices that don't make sense. Like it didn't make sense whatsoever. And as I'm saying, it also didn't make sense that you're trying to go and win this game and you're bringing on Ox. Why didn't you play Ox next to Utel? There, you speak about Yusuf Mart. Yusuf Mart is struggling at Chiefs. His general gameplay, he has been struggling. Captain or not, Chuck, the captain of Orlando Pirates, we've not seen him this entire season. And he's still the club captain, but there are other players determined by the coach who are better than him, even as they've had injury crisis with the centre backs. We've seen Maela come in now and again, but in those performances, honestly, he hasn't been impressive, and the coach has seen enough. Like, let's go get the 19-year-old and play him instead. You make the tough calls. You are the coach, and it can't be that Mart is playing because he's the captain. He certainly is not playing because there are no options. There are a plethora of options in the middle of the park, whether George Matlo, whether Shabalala, with Utlele, with Ox. Make one of those calls. Play Ox with Utlele as opposed to Utlele no Mart, because we can all see that Mart is struggling. So he's making decisions that just don't make any sense. And so it's on him. At this point, the season is on him. Chuck, speaking of coaches, right? You've got coaches who are playing in Africa, Miguel Cardoso of Mamelodi Sundowns, and then Steve Barker of Stellenbosch. Both of their teams played over the past weekend. Mamelodi Sundowns came through after extra time, a 1-0 win against Kukune United in the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal. And then you had Stellenbosch losing 1-0 to Imakesi over the weekend. And after the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal, the Sundowns coach, and he's been speaking about this entire season, Miguel Cardoso, he complained about the schedule, right? He's complaining about the scheduling once again, that why was that game put in on that Friday with the players of Mamelodi Sundowns coming back from international duty, having played on Tuesday, because they've got a Champions League game against Esperance coming up the following Tuesday. And he makes the example that because he coached Esperance as well, Esperance haven't played in 10 days, and their players weren't even picked for the Tunisian national team. So the Tunisian League and FA, they are helping out Esperance in the Champions League campaign. And Cardoso says that we're not only representing Sundowns and their fans, we're representing South Africa. So the South African football institutions should help us with the scheduling. Whereas Coach Barker, he was asked about the question, and he said he doesn't see any issue with the game against Makesi being played by his players, and even though they lost, right? Because he said it was in the schedule, it was there, and we played it, and we move on to go play the game against Zamalek in the Confed. Which side of that do you fall?
Firmly on Steve Barker's side, simply because that's the price you pay for being successful. You get more games put on your plate, and that's what you have to maneuver around. If you think about it, Jay, these entities are all independent. CAF does not care about what the PSL does, neither does the PSL care about what CAF does. Everyone has to make it work. And so, yes, it makes sense if you, in terms of scheduling these games more favorably. But if you don't play the game on Sunday, because there was a debacle in terms of handling of that fixture, there was under 17 playing the same day as Sundowns and Sekhukhune, and so it had to be postponed. If you don't play it on that Friday, Coach Miguel Cardoso, when do you play it? Is there a better, looking at the fact that time is running out, is there a more opportune time? Is there a better time? Because at this point in time, you're going to play the game right slap bang in the middle of a crucial title decider and a knockout game where you're in the second leg. Is that better? Probably not. So this, I think, is the most convenient time, if ever there was any in all of this mess. And so for me, I can't side with him, Jay, and say what you could have done us a favor. The schedule is there, like Barker says. You know what you're playing on a Friday, and yeah, I know we get to see things on European football where guys say we played Champions League, so we can't then play again on a Saturday. Let's play on a Sunday. Or we played Europa League, so therefore we can't play Saturday. We have to play Sunday. Or give us the Monday fixture or whatever. I get that, fine. But I don't think it's the league's duty, especially with Sundowns. Sundowns have depth, number one. Sundowns have got private jets, number two. We've seen this thing at play where the players are like, you know what, it could take us longer for us to get our players. We want to do A, B, C, and D, so let's do what we have to do. Luxuries that other teams don't have. Hence, Steve Barker says, "Well, it was in the schedule. I made it work." So, Jack, I can't say what I agree with him. Which the league must do something for them, because Hugo Bros is not thinking about the league. Hugo Bros is thinking about his job, and so he'll pick the best Bafana team. You would want to say which Tebo Khumukwana should have been rested. Umvala shouldn't have been there. Reina shouldn't have been there. Whoever you want to pick, but Hugo Bros is saying what's best for my qualification campaign. He's going to pick the best players. It must be a plus for it to be Sundowns players, because don't know. Yes, there's overexertion, but also there's time where you build rhythm. Because the last time Sundowns played, they lost to Pirates. It's good that they have a win under their belt against Sekhukhune going into their game for CAF. I think that's a positive. Apart from that, I think he's got enough players where he can exercise rotation. I don't think it's that much of an issue. There are too many games, but not in this particular round.
For the first time, I've reconsidered my stance on this, and I kind of support what Cardoso is saying, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the longest time, my position has been, well, look what happens in Europe. You play the league games on the weekends, and you play Champions League midweek, and you deal with the schedule as and when it happens. It is, as you say, a consequence of your own success. You finish in the top four, you qualify for the UEFA Champions League, and there are big games, tough games that are happening midweek, but you also are richly rewarded for being in the competition, even if then it has an effect on you and what happens in on the weekend or long term, the rest of the season. But we're not in Europe, and we don't necessarily have to do things the same way. And it's the reference point that Cardoso is pointing out, that you look at it as an Esperance, you also look at it in Al Ahly, you look at the success that they've had since Sundowns won the Champions League, right? Only 3 teams, if I'm not mistaken, I stand to be corrected, only 3 teams have won the Champions League in the 8 years since. This is the 9th year. That's been Al Ahly, it's been Esperance, it's been Wydad. Not certain about what happens in Morocco, but what happens in Tunisia, which Coach Cardoso just detailed for us, and also what happens with Al Ahly in Egypt, right, is that they give them a window to just focus on the Champions League. And you can make the argument that it has worked on on their behalf. And the thing that Cardoso is saying, where he says that Sundowns represent the country as well, there's two ideas to that. I think if you are a fan of any of the other teams that is not Mamelodi Sundowns, you should not care what Sundowns do in the Champions League. You should not care that they're inconvenienced. You should actually celebrate it because that's a rival team. I don't think Sundowns represent the country in that sense, that every fan, if Sundowns make it to the Champions League final and Pirates don't, I don't think every South African club supporter should just chime in behind Sundowns and like will them to a Champions League victory. Even if that is Pirates, even if it's Stellies, I think that's that fan base, they are the ones who should be invested in that way. But on the administrative side, that's a different thing altogether. They are representing the league, the PSL. They are representing the flag, which is SAFA, right? And it does behoove the league and SAFA to actually want to see the success, not only of Mamelodi Sundowns, of their teams. We're not speaking about Pirates, right? Because Pirates didn't have a game. They'd be in this conversation if they did also have a game prior to the game midweek. That's why we're speaking about Stellies, because they did have a game. Because if the South African club sides do well on the continent, it reflects greatly on SAFA and on the league as well. And in terms of future prospects, if like the Club World Cup is opened up to more positions, or the CAF Champions League expands and there are more positions, and that is a matter of the most highly rated leagues, South African league will be high up there because of the performance of the teams in the Champions League or in the Confed. And ultimately, as what Cardoso is saying, is look at what the other FAs are doing for their clubs. It's not just like our club taking on their club. It's their whole country taking on like our club. And we can't just be the club. In that sense, like we also need the backing of the country. This season is a bit of a non-starter, this conversation, because the thing is the league started like a month later than it should have. And there's also been the issue with Royal AM. So this particular season, like very specifically this season, it's hard for him to make that argument because we don't even know if Royal AM are coming back, and if they're coming back, they have to play 19 games in whatever many weeks are left, so there's been congestion. There is congestion. Pirates need to make up games. That is going to affect them at some point. It's not happening right now, but it's going to affect them at some point. So this season, there's nothing anyone could have done after the fact that because of sponsorship reasons, the season had to start late. This was going to happen. And with the Royal AM saga, and with the saga as well, as you point out, Chuck, in terms of the stadium availability, because why did Sundowns not know that the stadium they want to play in is not available, or whoever else was involved in that? But
so Sundowns, that's
overall, Chuck, in other seasons, I do think that the league and SAFA should support the teams that are playing in Africa.
What I find odd is that when you look at the league table, Sundowns are ahead of a lot of teams in terms of games played. And I don't understand why, because they went to the MTN 8. Okay, people weren't really playing league games at that point in time. They went to the final of Culling Black Label Cup, which suggests that if people are playing games, they are playing cup games and other people are playing league games. They're still in the Nedbank Cup as well. They're still in the Champions League, just like everyone else. But they're ahead of teams that didn't go deep in any of the local cups, teams that are just playing league football. And you ask yourself, how does that work? How does Sundowns have 2 games ahead of Ipolokwane City or someone like that? That, for me, doesn't make sense, right? But what I will say, Jay, is the fact that, you can say that it's other FAs against your singular team. But I think if Sundowns were playing away, they probably wouldn't have played midweek because they are back here at home for their first leg. I think then you don't shift too much, because if you shift that fixture, where is it going to play? As you said, with this particular campaign has been chaotic, so you have to play it at that point in time. And things have broken and things have gone wrong. But I mean, Barcelona came back, and yes, I know in terms of the size of the continental competition, Barcelona came back and played on a Thursday. They played again on a Sunday. So I'm just saying, it comes to territory. What's at play at this point in time? If you've gone deep, you must sacrifice something. But also, if you don't want to play so many games, prioritize cups. Make sure you get the league. Make sure you get the Champions League. Don't fight for Culling Cup, Nemakes. Don't go deep in the Nedbank Cup if it's going to be a hindrance. I mean, we saw what was said to be almost disrespectful by Jurgen Klopp when he says, I've got too many games to play. So the kids will play the Carabao Cup. The league wasn't helpful in that particular place, but he made a way around that. And yes, everyone's always complaining about we're supposed to get more time more breaks in between games so we can rest our players. But at this point in time, not much can be moved around. So for me, I understand what Steve Barker is saying in terms of it was there. You were supposed to plan around it. As much as we say what Unabi had time to work on his players, Cardoso at this very same time with his non-Bafana players, as I said, that the Sundown squad is huge. He could have put together an 11 fit enough to play against Sekhukhune. He really could have. And as much as we always say, their B team is good enough to win the league, they should be good enough to beat Sekhukhune.
Sometimes this team is not good enough to win the league. Having seen when they've made major rotations this season,
yeah,
they're good enough to be in the top 8, maybe top 4, but yeah, not win the league. I want to challenge something that you said. You said Sundowns have played more games than everybody else.
Not more than everyone else, but like if you look at half the roster, they're ahead of like half the roster.
Hold on.
Okay.
Sundowns have played 23 games, right?
Yeah.
In the PSL this season.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 Stelli's 22 games. Number 4 TS
One
Galaxy
ahead.
24 games.
Yeah.
Number 5 Sekhukhune 22 games. Number
Ahead.
6 Polokwane 23 games. Amazulu in number 7 24 games. Kaizer Chiefs in number 8 23 games.
On par.
Number
Keep
2
Keep going.
Orlando Pirates are the only ones who are a multitude of games behind Sundowns with 19 games. And you know why? Because the league was conspiring to give them breaks in December so they can play the Champions League games without any issues. And now it's coming back to bite them. And then you know what? And you know what Chuck is?
The league was conspiring.
Chuck is an Orlando Pirates fan.
The league was conspiring. We're supposed to claim 6 points from Real AM. The league was not conspiring.
Supposed to claim 6 points.
I was thinking 6 points
We don't
here.
know. We don't know.
You know what? Let's go abroad, Jay. Let's go to another team that is more in line with where you support and not me. Arsenal. Bukayo Saka looks ready to come back. We might see him in league action this week, and then perhaps again in the following week in the Champions League. How much of a boost is Bukayo Saka, and does it change the trajectory of their campaign, especially in the Champions League? If you add Bukayo Saka, do they suddenly become better in terms of their chances against Real Madrid?
We are headed to the Easter period, right? Where the rhetoric is around what the Messiah has done for his people, right? Where he's come and he's brought light, he's brought rest, and he's brought the promise of new futures. Bukayo Saka's come back to Arsenal, Chuck, is just like that. He is an answered prayer. With Havertz having gone down with injury, with Jesus out for the rest of the season, Jesus also out for the rest of the season, and you had the situation whereby Saka was out for 3 months, and then Martinelli also had an injury. They was sidelined for a while, and it was a patch-up job in that front line. You had Moreno, who was signed as a midfielder, playing as the striker. Bukayo Saka coming back, and you also then have Martinelli, who's also back, is exactly what Arsenal need at this point of the season. With everything on the table and all the chips in on the Champions League, I still believe that the Premier League is gone. Regardless of the issues that are happening with Liverpool and Trent, and is Salah going to sign, is Van Dijk going to sign, and what is happening, and they've not been in a great run of form, right? They've been knocked out in every other competition. All they have left is the Premier League, also having been beaten in a cup final not too many weeks ago. I still think they've got a firm grip on the Premier League title. So the only thing that is left for Arsenal to play for is the Champions League. Now they come up against the mighty Real Madrid in that competition, and you have to believe if you're going to play against Real Madrid, you're going to have to match the firepower somehow. And as well, if you want to say that, I wouldn't say it's great, as well as Nwaneri has done deputizing for the absentees, and as well as the coach Arteta has tried to do with what he does have at his disposal, you just wouldn't be able to. You just wouldn't be able to walk into that matchup in the 2 legs at the Bernabeu and at the Emirates and match that firepower with what you have. Bukayo Saka is a game changer. He is Arsenal's best attacker. He is the guy that they look to. He's the talisman in terms of he's not Mo Salah, not quite that level as yet, although Mo Salah in big games is questionable, and we are still finding out about Saka in these early parts of his career. But when you consider his assist numbers, he's still second in terms of assists given in the league behind Mo Salah, even though he's missed 20 games, right, or 3 months. Arsenal's attacking prowess, which has been lacking this season, even with him, it hinges on Bukayo Saka. And we know how they favor that right-hand side. It's him. It's Odegaard, mostly when White is playing as a right back, or Timber, who's come in as White has been injured. And that's really, in an attacking sense, the only thing that clicks, that works for Arsenal. And when you've taken that away, they really were crippled offensively. So the return of Bukayo Saka, Chuck, is right on time. You hopefully get him some minutes under the belt in the league games midweek, and then he's ready to go. That's what Arteta did say in his press conference, that he's raring to go, and they've had to hold him back actually, and they've been patient and followed his recovery to a T, which suggests that they are not trying him out by the time next week and the Champions League comes around, but they are ready to say to him, to unleash him and say, go win us the tie against Real Madrid, and he's come at the right time.
Right time, Angaz, because my argument is a little too little too late, because yes, he is the fulcrum. Yes, he is probably the MVP next to maybe Odegaard, next to maybe Uraya, and the defensive duo of Saliba and Gabriel. But he's not going to change anything in terms of their fortunes in the league, right? So obviously they're going to try push for second, and that's as best as they can do. And the Champions League, though, however, they scored 7 without him, and yes, that was PSV. Do they now suddenly have enough power to compete against Real Madrid? I don't know, because he can't do the job by himself. I think those missing pieces in terms of Martinelli. Is he fully fit, Martinelli, at this point?
Martinelli is fit enough.
Oh, we'll see. Right? Minus Havertz, minus Gabriel Jesus. And obviously players like Trossard will have to participate as well. So, I mean, basically my answer is that I don't know if he changes the trajectory of this season. I don't think that Arsenal will still win the Champions League. I still don't think they'll do that. So I don't think he changes much. But in the tie against Real Madrid, Jay, he is the ace in the deck. He is your best chance against Real Madrid, because he's the guy who's going to push the defenders in terms of pace, in terms of dribbling as well. And basically, as you said, they've used that right-hand side very much in terms of they go there. He's the guy who puts in the crosses against the assist numbers. He's the guy who stretches the field so that you guys can play on either wing. He's the guy who allows Timber to overlap and become dangerous again. But because their deputies don't really necessarily bring that threat, you're like, Timber's not going to go because he's just going to let them be exposed. So they play in a different way, in a different dimension. Saka adds a lot to that. Dynamism has got that X factor in terms of what you want sometimes in a game when things are deadlocked. But does he change things for Arsenal? Because I think sometimes, Jay, when you look at everyone around him or other people who are playing in his absence, some of them have hit the ceiling. Some of them have hit a wall where you're like, really, can you give me more? I want more from players like Trossard. I want more from players like Rice. Yes, Thomas Partey's got good passes here and there, but largely his body of work in the turn of the year, I don't know if he's been that great where you're like, this guy, give him Saka, give this team Saka and they go over the edge. That's what I feel. I feel they aren't that team. They're teams who are, if you just add this player, they become that much better. If you give them Saka, how much better do they really get is my question. No doubts about his quality, no doubts about his character, but this current team, where they sit, how they're feeling, their mood, and how they're playing at this point in time, are they the guys who just need a little bit of Saka to go over the top? I don't quite see it that way. But I can be wrong on this one, because Saka is a game changer. He's been a match winner for Arsenal on numerous occasions. I mean, many games in the league, he's pushed Arsenal to the point where they've chased City as far as they've gone in the past campaign. So I think definitely is a plus, is a bonus to have Saka back. Does it change things for Arsenal? I don't know how much. That's where I am. In terms of had he been there with Abo Odegaard and building some momentum, give him, say he was there in Feb, then you're like, okay, Real Madrid, we're going to hurt you because we've done A, B, C, and D. And also sometimes when players come back from injury, they're not quite the same. So do you think he hits the ground running? I don't know, because the pressure's on. Real Madrid is on the horizon.
We don't know what he's going to look like until we see him on the field. In that tie against Real Madrid started as the favorites. Without Saka, they were the favorites. Real Madrid, with Saka on the Arsenal side, Real Madrid are still the favorites in that tie. My argument is that Saka closes that gap. If there's a chance, there's always a chance. There's a chance that Arsenal, of course, come through against Real Madrid. That chance is greater with Saka as opposed to without him. Do I expect Arsenal to get through against Real Madrid? Not quite, but Arsenal, as I said at the start of the season, they seem to have the tools to go up against big teams. The question that needs to be answered is, do they have the heart when the lights are brightest? Because when you do look at their performances, the last 19 games against big six teams, not having a loss, and how they perform in those instances, they are suited to play against the big teams. They're also suited to play against teams who are willing to play against them, because where Arsenal have struggled the most is against teams that want to sit in the low block against them, because coming into the season with the near successes of the 2 previous seasons in the Premier League. Teams have caught on. Arsenal are a big team. They're a dangerous team, and you don't want to go man for man, mano a mano against them because they're going to hurt you. PSV did that and they caught 7, And in the Champions League, Arsenal have had a better record than in the Premier League. That's because in the Champions League, they play against similarly minded teams or teams who want to play on the front foot and want to play in those games and also have success, tend to have more success in those kind of game states. That's what you're going to find against Real Madrid, a big team and a team who are going to want to play on the front foot and they're open. We've seen Real Madrid in the league playing against teams who are like 16th, 17th in La Liga and they are conceding 2 goals at a time. Arsenal will enjoy playing against Real Madrid more than they would enjoy playing against Forest are one of the big teams this season, but a team that just want to sit back, and let them do the heavy lifting. So while I still expect Real Madrid to come through in that one, I do think the addition of Saka gives Arsenal some hope, a better scope to have hope to come through against Real Madrid. And then Chuck, while with Arsenal, right, and that the attacking talents or the lack thereof, Arsenal are going to be in the market, we believe, this summer for a striker. The reports coming in from The Athletic is that they are looking at Gyökeres over at Sporting Lisbon. And of course, the Arsenal fans have also coveted Alexander Isak over at Newcastle for the last 2 seasons, it feels like, at the moment. And Isak has been maybe the name that has been attached so much to Arsenal, also because of the number 14, and he's a skillful tall striker. And of course, that reminds Arsenal fans of the great Thierry Henry, right? But Chuck, the contrast between the 2 players, Alexander Isak versus Gyökeres, as options for Arsenal. You've got Alexander Isak, who plays in the Premier League and therefore has Premier League experience, but is likely going to be priced at like 120 million. Gyökeres, on the other hand, he's at Sporting Lisbon, and this is when he's come into his own. Previously, he's been in England, at Brighton, at Coventry in the Championship, and at Swansea as well in the Championship, but didn't leave a lasting impression. But he's likely going to cost only 60 million. Gyökeres has got 85 goals in 92 games for Sporting in the last 2 seasons. In the 2.5 seasons, Alexander Isak has been at Newcastle. He's got 58 goals in 100 games. Who of these 2 strikers presents better value for Arsenal? Alexander Isak at possibly 120 million or Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon at 60 million, half the price?
I mean, we saw certain Ruben Amorim, right, winning the Portuguese league, come to the Premier League and find out that it's different levels. And because Gyökeres was at Brighton, granted he didn't play a game, but he was loaned out because whoever was ahead of him was deemed to be better than him. And yes, I get it, he was a young striker because players sometimes do bloom a bit later. Hence, some people back Højlund and say, well, at age 20, who was hot, who was scoring back-to-back games? Not too many strikers. Only when they get to 23, 24, it gets better.
Sorry about that. You know how we're raving about Vitinha's performance against Liverpool?
Yeah.
Vitinha was at Wolves.
See?
And Wolves were like, nah, we good.
It happens, Like I saw him, I was like, this is a good player, but he was not at that level when I saw him. For whatever reason, I was like, okay, this is someone reborn. And so you want to go for someone who's Prem, tried and trusted, number 1. Number 2, Arsenal are at that level now. They can spend 100 million on players like Declan Rice, so why not Alexander Isak? Because he's got the numbers. And I think of the 2 teams, right, I'm not too sure in terms of having seen Sporting and Gyökeres play, in terms of does he fit into the Arsenal style better than Alexander Isak would. So I think the way that Arsenal want to play, Isak is the one that fits in so much better. I think you get what you pay for. At 120 million, I think he hands you the league. You don't want unknown commodities. Look at Man United. I know they're a different level altogether, but Xerxes unproven, Højlund unproven, and so you're stuck. You don't want to then go with another player who's unproven in the Premier League and then partner him up with Havertz, who's not quite really a natural goal scorer. Jesus is not really a striker, as he said in his own words. Get Alexander Isak because he knows what he's doing. He wants to be the main guy. He's the guy who's been fighting with Callum Wilson. Ultimately won that fight because of fitness, right? But there are goals that speak for themselves. There's quality, there's interplay, there's the fact that he knows the league. He knows how to play in all these wet conditions, the rain and whatnot. So for me, Jay, it's a no-brainer. I know the price tag is double, but I think you get what you pay for. Alexander Isak has announced himself as a player who's good in La Liga, came to England in a team that was about average, right? They made signings, became better. He was still the leading man, and he's ready for better heights. So for me, Jay, I think it's a no-brainer. It's Isak, even with the money. even with the price tag?
It's a hard one, Chuck.
You guys spend the hundreds now. It's not hard, Dwana.
I'll tell you why it's a hard one, right? To begin with, Alexander Isak is the better player. Even with those numbers, one guy is doing those numbers in Portugal, and the other one is doing in the Premier League. It is harder to play and score goals in the Premier League, but also just overall in terms of the profile of the player. Alexander Isak is a more complete footballer than Gyökeres. He's just magic. Like Alexander Isak is magic, and that's why the nostalgic feelings of Thierry Henry come up in the minds of Arsenal fans, because you can just see it. Let the good times roll. Like once again, take us back to those times. But if we're talking about a price tag that is double, that's a lot of money, Chuck. And the thing is, if you go and you spend 120 million or more on Alexander Isak, that's it. That's your transfer budget done on one player in the transfer window, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I look at an Arsenal and there are there are a number of needs that need to be filled. Right? Yes, Chuck.
Zubimendi played against Man United. They got knocked out. He was there.
Even if not Zubimendi, but you need someone in that midfield, because Jorginho is going to leave on a free. Partey is going to leave on a free. Now what you have is Declan Rice and
Odegaard.
Odegaard.
Yeah.
So you need players in the middle of the park. You need someone who's going to come in that same profile of a Jorginho or Thomas Partey, someone who can control tempo, and someone who can receive the ball in a half turn, unlike Declan Rice, who great lad, but very lacking in terms of his midfield play. And then, Chuck, there's the fact that you still need to upgrade that position that is played by Martinelli. With great heart from Martinelli. He's an all-in guy, and Trossard has come in, and Trossard is very much a squad player. He's come in, he's done well when he's played, but you don't want to rely on either one of them, to be honest, to be one of your main dudes. So the way I see it, the options is you go get Alexander Isak and you're patching up everywhere else, or you get Victor Gyökeres and you are rolling the dice in a sense, because he doesn't have Premier League experience. Like maybe you get there and it's like, man, you are just a flat track bully. When you get here at another level, you get found out. But I've seen Kai Havertz score for Arsenal, whereas when he was at Chelsea, we thought, man, it's over. And I think a guy who is clearly a better finisher than Kai Havertz, a more instinctual striker than Kai Havertz, if Kai Havertz is able to give you 13 goals in a Premier League season, that guy is going to come in and score 20 in that Arsenal team, especially then as well. Saka is back from injury. Noneri has taken a step up. Odegaard is also going to be there, and then you've bought either Zubimendi or anybody else, or somebody else in that midfield, and you've got another helping hand coming in on the left wing, who's also going to be contributing assists and goals. So therefore, it's not the pressure on the guy who's going to be playing number 9 to do everything that we see Alexander Isak do at Newcastle. Where you might mitigate all that magic by not needing it as much, because the rest of the team offensively are stronger. So for me, it seems like in terms of the price point, you get Gyökeres and you get other viable and valuable pieces everywhere around him, or you get Alexander Isak, and what you are hoping happens is that he himself is able to make up for the deficit that you might still be experiencing with not having plugged those other holes that are present in the Arsenal team.
I mean, Jay, you speak about Jorginho, who hasn't really featured much, right? You speak about Thomas Partey, who had like a lengthy absence at some point because of troubles behind the scenes. He comes in, he goes out the team, not much changed in terms of what Arsenal can do. Speak about Declan Rice, who you weren't really impressed with since he's joined the team. But even with those players, Arsenal have been competitive enough. The issue is just the goals being scored by those players, because there was a point in time where Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, and I forgot who else scored goals. You're like, oh, that's where the goals are coming from. And then they dried up. And so I think it's easier to figure those goals, the goal issue with Isak than to try figure out, can we get the replication of those goals from everyone else?
The ball to Isak, Chuck, if you don't have like the guy in midfield who is helping with,
it doesn't have to be expensive,
and as a linchpin between he doesn't have to be expensive, but he has to be good. Again,
he doesn't have to be world class as well.
I'm gonna go back to PSG. Like I saw what PSG have in the midfield.
No one has
that. You need a guy, if not quite that, but who approximates that. If you're talking about what are Arsenal trying to do, they're trying to win the Premier League and the Champions League. If you're gonna be at those levels, you can't just be like playing Trossard. No disrespect to Trossard, but playing Trossard level players week in, week out in important positions such as in your DM position or in that left wing. Like you need like a Williams or someone of that nature. You need a Zubimendi or someone of that quality in the middle of the park. And the thing is, as I'm saying, you'll have an Isak, but the ball is just never going to get to him.
But it's going to get to him. Like I'm saying, Liverpool play with players like Soboslai. There are players that sit where like Gundogan still commands a play. Well. True, but I'm saying that you guys have got an Odegaard, you've got a Rice. As much as you're complaining about him collecting, you just need to get two players, dog, worth 10 million. That's it.
Chuck. No, Chuck. Who's worth 10 million in this market? Like, who are you gonna get for 10 million to start for Arsenal? 10 million. Come on, Chuck.
You don't have to be.
No, Chuck.
Okay, my man. For instance, Okasia was the Man City signed from Porto, not mistaken. That's one of those gems that no one really looked at. There are players like that. It doesn't have to be a high profile player coming to replace Partey. So I'm just saying it mustn't be someone that everyone's coveting. There's a Boubacar Kamara at Aston Villa. I don't think it's going to be 10 million. But my argument is that if you're fixing the goal issue and you still got an Odegaard, you still got a Declan Rice, you don't need a special player in the middle. You don't need someone to be amazing. You just need to be competent.
Here's the thing. The market is such that those price points are not even for special players. It is for the right player. Like, you don't need to go get someone who is going to rival a Rodri. Right, in terms of the best DM in the world, or not even like a Vitinha. It'd be great to get Vitinha, right? Yeah. But not even that level. Even Chuck a step below that, and that's what you need, a step below that. Even a step below that, you are looking at like 40, 50 million pounds.
10 million pounds.
I'm going to play for Arsenal.
But I think
going to get a bonus at the Club World Cup and sorted.
Yeah, but I think, Jay, honestly, I go with the Isak issue because it's always seemed like the fact that had Wenger gotten Suarez, if he wasn't playing those games with 40 million plus a pound, you get that guy go over the top. And I don't think your midfield was exceptional at that point in time. It was good enough with very good offensive players to augment that. So I think with what you are and what you've built in terms of cohesion and players who understand the system, you don't need a special player. As long as the guy up front is special in scoring goals. Hence, we speak so highly of Bukayo Saka that when he comes in, he makes such a difference. Everyone else outside of Bukayo Saka is all right to the tune of second place without him. So if you add someone special like Isak, because you don't want to find out yet again, Jay, that you've got Jesus, Havertz, and Gyökeres, none of them can do the job. That I think would be frustrating. So rather have Isak, and you'll make things work, man. Nwaneri and Lewis Kelly are okay, right? And you just play Anyana, who's got a bit more experience, you'll be fine.
Play Anyana, no Chuck. But you know what? I hear you, and if I felt that.
Like an Endo.
2 seasons ago, I
would be 10 million.
I would have felt that Arsenal are a player away. And by all means, put all your chips in on Alexander Isak. But the way that this season has gone, because since 2 seasons ago, you had Shaka who's left. You've bought Declan Rice, and I don't think he's the guy like in that DM. He's going to play in that midfield somewhere, but not in that DM. And then you also went and you got Marino from Sociedad, and that's not quite worked out this season so far. And you had 2 seasons ago, you had Martinelli scoring 15 goals, right? And that might have made you think, oh, he's going to continue like this, but that was his peak. And I don't think he gives you anything replicable to that going forward. And we know in football, in the current state of football, the wingers are the rock stars. You need wingers. You need like high volume production wingers. You have one in Saka. It would be great if you could get a twin for him on the other side. And if that is facilitated by not paying as much for one striker and play. The guy has scored 85 goals in 92 games now. He's not a scrub, Gyökeres, that we're talking about, you know. And there is a risk, I admit, and especially after seeing Xerxes and Højlund at Manchester United. But the other thing is, I do believe that Arsenal are a better structure. And if you do have the right pieces everywhere, the total is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not contingent on just getting the one guy. I don't think that's where Arsenal are right now, unfortunately. As I'm saying, a few seasons ago, I probably would have said that, but with the way that things have gone and with Miguel Cardoso only buying defenders and then buying the wrong people when he's gone, went to Sociedad, bought a midfielder, but didn't come back with the right one. I'd be willing to roll the dice on Gyökeres because I think that's a better overall team and squad that you'll have to challenge upon all fronts.
I mean, rolling the dice, that's what Pep Guardiola has had to do this season with his embarrassment of riches. With that, if Haaland's not scoring, let me sign Mamouche. If Kevin De Bruyne is not scoring, let me find a Garcia because they've been splashing the cash. If it doesn't work, Arsenal, you spend more money. That's how it gets done. But speaking of City, Jay, they have been poor. They've defensively, they've been poor in terms of attack. Hence, they're out of every competition except that they won against Bournemouth, right? But they're on their way to the Club World Cup at the end of the season. And questions were posed to Pep Guardiola in terms of if this team goes all the way to win the Club World Cup, do they get a bonus? And he says they don't deserve a bonus, not even a watch, because it does not redeem their season. My question to you is that if they win the FA Cup, Jay, is it something to be happy about, or is this season like done and dusted? It's a throwaway season.
It's a throwaway season.
Mm.
And I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself because the other week I was talking about you want to win, right? But for Man City, it's different. If you are Manchester United, like the FA Cup is a successful season. If you're Arsenal, the FA Cup is a successful season because you've not won anything in a long time. And in the case of Manchester United, you're not good enough to go win the league or the Champions League. But with what we've seen from Manchester City over the period that Pep Guardiola has been there, a season that does not end with either the league or the Champions League is not a great season. And with everything that has happened this season, I mean, it would put a nice bow to it at the end, and everyone goes on a holiday with a bit of a better feeling. But when they do a post-mortem of the season, they'll realize that there's quite a lot that went wrong this season, and just winning the FA Cup will not crack over that. It'd be great, as I'm saying, and they add another trophy in the cabinet. And when you look at the numbers, they'll be there, and they climb towards the top of the English game. But for Manchester City, the FA Cup is not the Premier League. It's not the Champions League, and maybe we've become too accustomed to City winning the big prizes, and we've taken it for granted that they're just gonna roll up in any given season and do that. Whereas that is a very hard thing to do, but they've done it. Time and time again, and this coach is a coach who we've seen he wins league titles, even maybe not Champions League at the same rates. He's gone like a great big gap between his second Champions League title and the third that he won with City. But yeah, when he's not winning the Champions League, he's going out to the team that eventually tends to end up as the champions, Real Madrid, or he's losing in the final. So that's not the season that we saw. We didn't see a season of a treble. We didn't see a season with the league and maybe a Carabao or a deep run in the Champions League. We've seen a season where they were knocked out early in the Champions League and they've been out of it in the race for the league title for a very long time, right? Even before the turn of the calendar. And now what they have in front of them is the FA Cup, where there's nobody else in terms of names. There's nobody else but them. So if they go on to win it, it's you had to, considering the competition that was left in the FA Cup.
Well,
and and the FA Cup is the second most prestigious trophy in England, but the levels that we've become accustomed to where Manchester City are concerned, winning the FA Cup does not save the season, does not make it a successful season for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it makes it successful, but I think you go for it. I think it does give a happy end to the season because we found out that things aren't right at City, right? Like Kyle Walker championship because he figured to Aksebenzi. Kevin De Bruyne had injury niggles in the previous campaign, and now we've seen what they've done to his body in this campaign because there's just no spark or magic in him. Phil Foden is devoid of magic as well. We found that bringing back Gundogan was not a good plan. Kusanov has not fit in. Rodri has been injured. So lots of things have gone wrong at Manchester City. Yes, they made signings in terms of Savinho, Mamouche, and the likes. But I think when you look at that, in terms of the fact that we've had players who've all of a sudden gotten old, we've had injuries, we have guys who are struggling for form, would it not be great to still have one thing ticked right in terms of we are supposed to be the mentality monsters? Let it be that even in a poor season, we've got a trophy. Even in a poor season, we were able to bring something because there are teams like Newcastle who huffed and puffed and had their best under Eddie Howe. They were going for the Carabao Cup and were picked by Man United. And there was nothing to it. Hence why when they beat Liverpool, they're on a bus with the parade for the Carabao Cup, right? And I get it. They haven't won anything in 56 years. But what I'm trying to get at is that when you've had a poor spell, it would be great to then finish off strong. It would be great to then say, at least there's still some cohesion in the team. At least there's some qualities that have not gone away, and that's our ability to fight. Because sometimes you just look at City and you're like, you guys look helpless. Whether you're playing Brighton, whether you're playing Brentford, whether you're playing United, even United of all teams somehow find a way to beat you guys, and you're like, guys, what's gone wrong? So for me, if they can at some point at the season say, at least we won this, I think that's a very good mark of the season in terms of the silver lining. Yes, everything is doom and gloom, but I think at that point there's a bit more belief in the side while the players who are going to continue with Pep Guardiola, there's a bit more trust in the manager, because we were here saying answering the question what to do with Pep Guardiola. Do you keep him or for the rebuild, or do you send him away? Ultimately, we said you keep him because he's the best possible option. So for me, Jay, I think they go for it. Obviously, it doesn't change. It's not the league. It's not the Champions League. It's the next best thing that you can get after those things. It's part of the treble, Jay. When they got the treble and they were great, that was one of those things. So if you can get one, I know it's the least of the three, but if you can get one of the traditional treble, i.e. Carabao Cup, i.e. Community Shield, or whatever, if you get one of them, it must count for something.
I hear you. Where Pep Guardiola is concerned as well, in terms of the post-mortem of what has happened this season, he said, Chuck, that the issue with Manchester City has not been tactics. The issue has been heart. The players haven't quite shown that they are up for it as they have in previous seasons. Do you agree with one Pep Guardiola that it's been less tactics and been more a question of effort?
I don't know. I think it's one of those back to the Kaizer Chiefs conversation, where I think it's a bit of both, because sometimes you wonder if Guardiola is good scoring goals, okay, why not find a fix or a similar player to stop the goals at the back? Haaland somehow has gone dry. His use of Phil Foden has been sparingly so thus far. And I think to myself, had you been using the player of the year from the beginning of the campaign, maybe results are different. Had you found different fixes for your problems, bringing Gundogan was not a good thing, and he still plays to this day. So I think it's not necessarily all entirely a matter of heart, because these players, they celebrate, they're happy when they win tough games, but also they get down as well when they lose. I think also Guardiola has had a say in their form. I think Guardiola has had a say in terms of who he picks and how he uses players, because Mamouche scored in the game before the international break, starts on the bench. Why? I don't know. He comes on and scores the winner. So for me as well, you have to point the finger at Pep Guardiola. As great and as good as Pep Guardiola is, the same thing can be said about City, mighty City, who win trebles, who win Champions Leagues and leagues. If they're bad, I don't think Guardiola is exempt. I think tactics are also been a problem.
First of all, these words are troubling for me from Pep Guardiola, because essentially what he has said, that the issue with our team, Manchester City, this season has not been me. It's been them. Because tactics is the coach, right? When you say it's not the tactics have been correct. So when he is looking at the season and breaking it down in its different facets, so the mark he gives to the coaching would be an A still. That, well, from my side, our side, the technical team, I believe we prepared them as we were supposed to. We gave them a game plan which was good enough to go on and do what we've done in the past. The issue is that they were not up to doing that. And that's troubling for me to come out and say that, because even in the quote, Chuck, where he says they don't deserve a bonus, initially he was being asked about the players, right? And initially he was answering about the players, and then towards the end of him saying that, then he includes everybody else. And that to me, just like, it reeks of pointing fingers. That, well, when we've been successful, it's been me and the players. And now that we've not been as successful, the issue is just the players. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. And in terms of saying heart, what heart are you expecting from a Gundogan when the legs are not there anymore? Kyle Walker is over in Italy and he's not even playing. Heart is not going to carry you up and down the field and keeping up with Vinicius.
But Amara, from the planet here, which as good as the other powers are, Captain Planet does not come if you don't bring heart. So what he's talking about is the integral part of the team. If you say heart, the team all of a sudden becomes
the weakest power. Exactly. You see, he went for the weakness with Pep Guardiola.
But also, Che, as someone who's gone through a divorce and all the stuff that's gone on with him behind the scenes, you can't tell him that he's unaffected and that his tactics and his mind on the game, or his focus on the game, that has been unbothered or untroubled. It's just a matter of the players on the other side. So,
Chuck,
yeah, I agree with you, man.
The other thing, man, I watched Manchester City play against Sporting when Ruben Amorim was there. It might have been his last week with Sporting Lisbon, and they shipped 5 in that match, right?
Yeah.
They as well were played against PSG, and they were played off the park absolutely off the park by PSG. Real Madrid, likewise, there was no contest. And you know what happened in those matches? All of those teams were playing a direct form of football. They were very happy to play in transition, and they hit City hard. I saw them play against Bournemouth as well, and Bournemouth have had a good season. Away at Bournemouth, Bournemouth pressed City to the hills in their own half, and they could not deal with that. And Pep Guardiola has insisted this season to play with the type of build-up play and his possession-based style that has led him to success, whereas seemingly the world of football has gone in another direction tactically. He's bought Mamouche, and he's showing signs now that he's adapting his style of play towards that. So it has been tactics. We have seen the most successful teams. They don't quite look like a model of a Pep Guardiola team, whereas his continue to play like that. And the thing is, with players who are no longer truly in their prime, and this team probably needed to be refreshed after the treble, but they had one last squeeze out of the lemon to go win the Premier League. But where we are in 2024-2025 season, the style of play by Manchester City with those aging players was not the one to go with. It was not going to be successful. So tactically, he did miss the mark of the season. So he cannot say it's not tactics. It's just hard. And as I'm saying, my big peeve around this whole thing is that he's making it. He's coming across as, I was good, nothing wrong on my side. All the issues we experienced this season comes down to the players. And the thing is, he's questioning their hearts. He's questioning these professionals in terms of how much they wanted, and he's concluded that they just didn't want to play. It's like
the entire campaign,
which is a massive accusation, Chuck.
And I mean, when he was losing 12 games in a row, or rather without winning 12 games in a row, he said he'll find a way to fix it. So in the back of his mind, he was like, how can I fix it? Because these guys don't have heart. The tactics are there, but these guys are failing me. So to come out and say that at this point of the season, yeah, it doesn't sound good. You wonder if he still has the dressing room together. Everyone wants to play for Pep because you get to win trophies, but I wonder how people feel about Pep Guardiola at that point. You don't want to hear Zlatan talk.
No. We'll see if he's able to come up with the solutions. We'll see what Manchester City look like for the rest of the season. Will they go on to win the FA Cup? We'll see as well what they look like after the Club World Cup after that and coming into the new season. And we'll be right here to be talking about all of those developments as they happen. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Two Up Front. If it is your first time here and you have not yet done so, if you're returning but you've not done so, please subscribe to the channel, please like the channel, please share it far and wide. Please do drop your comments in the comments section. We absolutely love hearing from you and responding back to you. And you can also continue the conversation with us across all social media platforms. You'll find us at 2Upfront Pod. You'll find me at J_Mzulu. You'll find Chuck at Chuck2Up. From myself, Jay, I'm outie.
Last thought has me wondering that is Miguel Cardoso feeling the pressure of the chase for the second star, because he wants the league to help them. Do it yourself, man.